Morning, everybody. I'm just letting my stream come up on all my different platforms and just kind of checking things, making sure we're up and moving. I had a few little issues with my output into Twitch last week, or actually everywhere. It was sort of coming across really choppy. So I'm just taking a minute to make sure. I made a few adjustments to my OBS output. So I'm going to just see that those are all coming up okay. And everything is looking good. So I'm going to get started here right at the top of the hour. And so if you're in the chat, say hi. I'd love to say hi to you. I'm going to just go back and double check things. And everything is looking good, looking good. All right, so I think we're just about ready to get started. Let's see, make sure we're all looking good. All right, much better, looks much better. Yeah, if you're out there, say hi in the chat. I'd love to hear from you. If you can, once my video gets up and running, you can let me know how good or bad that sounds or looks, and then let me know about the audio as well if you're out there. I'd appreciate it. So just about a minute, and everything is looking good to me. So let's try. All right, looking good. Oh yeah, let me bring that up, because that's my important piece for the day, is my list of what I'm actually doing. So, all right, we're just about ready. And got about a little bit less than a minute. Appreciate you bearing with me. I want to make sure that this is getting a little bit more optimized than I had in the past. It's always checking this and checking that. Hi, everybody. It's me, Michael Kyer, out here streaming to all sorts of different places today. Twitch and Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. So I'm out here 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 a.m. And I've been streaming now for just about 2 months on Twitch mainly, but I've been working with streaming since the beginning of quarantine. I jumped on with my church to help them get Sunday services online, and then I've been doing that every Sunday and meetings in between, and so I've been working on this, and now I'm trying to share some of what I've learned anyway. Hopefully it'll help some people out there. If you're brand new, you're just getting started, then hopefully this will help you a little bit. And if you are looking for professional help, you want to hire me to do something, that's always cool. I'm always available for that. But right now what I'm mainly doing is helping new people. So if you're watching today, you're watching live, say hi. I'd love to hear from you. If you're watching this in the future, thank you for stopping by and getting checking out my content, my stream. I think that I'm putting out a lot of good stuff, a lot of different software platforms and best practices and that type of thing. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be going here, let's see, December 27th. I hope you're having a great holiday. I'm going to start the year off, or end the year off with one of my oldies but goodies, is Zoom. So I think we're ready to jump into it. A couple of minutes in, hopefully you've had a chance to kind of settle in, and it's going to be good. So Zoom, yeah, I've been working with this since March of 2020, and before that I had never even heard of Zoom. And since then, I have gotten a lot of experience with it. I've had a lot of Zoom meetings, and I'm sure a lot of you have as well. And I know that a lot of us have gotten sick and tired of Zoom meetings. We've had bad Zoom meetings. We have bad Zoom meetings regularly. But the thing is that Zoom itself is really great. The software is phenomenal, really. It's very robust, very solid, very stable. It's gone through an amazing amount of growth in the last since March of 2020. So a big shout out to the developers. I have to say this every single time. The work that you're doing to get this out there and running is quite amazing. And so much respect to you. I love the software. I use it all the time. I highly recommend it. If you're going to be using it for a larger meeting, if you're going to be a host, I highly recommend paying for the paid version. Today, I'm just going to be going over the basic version, the basic account, and the important pieces that you need to know about that. So this first part, I'm going to go through and basically just talk. There's a lot of different pieces to this, and so the best practice stuff is what I'm going to start with. Jump right in so that you can have a great meeting, so you can have a great Zoom meeting. Now this is primarily directed at the people who are hosting a meeting, but if you're just an attendee, there's lots of information in here for you as well, as far as things to think about. So Zoom meetings really aren't bad. Your Zoom meetings may be bad. That's very true. But Zoom meetings themselves don't have to be bad. All right. So this first part is going to be how to not have a bad meeting, how to have a great meeting, and then I'm going to go into three separate things: the three basic parts of Zoom. And then a little bit about updates and settings, and then I'll run through the actual software windows themselves a little bit to give you an idea. Especially if you're a basic user or a new user, you'll have a pretty good idea of what Zoom is going to look like when you've got it up and running on your computer. Now, I know a lot of us are very, very familiar with Zoom, so but there's definitely some things in here. It's worth going through in a comprehensive manner through all the main pieces to get an idea of what we're talking about. So let's get started with how to have a great Zoom meeting. Video conferencing is different. All right, it's not the same as having a face-to-face meeting with somebody in the same room. And one of the big problems we run into with it is when we try to shoehorn in these pre-quarantine practices that we would have with meetings, these ideas about how we think a meeting should happen. And that's where the friction starts. That's where your bad Zoom meeting starts, is by trying to bring in all of these other older ways of thinking into this new, into the software, into video, into remote speakers. So you really have to adjust your point of view and accept that there are new facts of life as far as dealing with video conferencing, dealing with your audience. Things are different, and that's really the first place you should start if you're a host, is start to think about, am I adjusting to the software, or am I trying to make the software adjust to me? And really that's where the friction starts. So what is a host when it comes to Zoom? A host is the person who created the meeting and then starts the meeting. It's not necessarily the person running the meeting or the person who's in charge of the meeting or the person who's responsible for the meeting. The host is a technical definition. So when you get to your co-hosts, if you have a co-host, you can assign a co-host. They'll have basically the same permissions that the host would have, but they can run the meeting, they can be responsible for the meeting. Even though it's their label is co-host, that doesn't mean that they're second. That doesn't mean that they aren't in charge of the meeting. So I could host the meeting and I could have my boss be a co-host. Now, that might be a little bit of an ego thing in there if you don't want to be labeled the co-host, but that, again, goes back to that changing your point of view. So as I go through this, if this sounds a little, if some of this sounds a little preachy, or it sounds like I'm talking down to you, I don't want you to feel that way. I want you to try and start to change your perspective a little bit. So there are a few differences between the host and the co-host. And the biggest one is that the host can assign co-hosts, but co-hosts can't assign other co-hosts. So that is a technical, distinction between the two. And the host has control of the streaming. So if you want to send your signal out to YouTube or another platform, then the host is the one who's going to be responsible for setting that up and making sure that part is running. But those are the main distinctions. Beyond that is there aren't really much distinction between the hosts and the co-hosts. So it really, how to have a great meeting comes down to who's running the meeting. And your audience's comfort is really key. So that's really beyond the changing your perspective. Starting to think about your audience is really crucial to making a great Zoom meeting, because dealing with computers, dealing with video conferencing, dealing with all the different things that can possibly go wrong really takes a lot of energy. It really does. You're processing a lot of things in your mind that you wouldn't necessarily have been in a face-to-face meeting, when you're in the room with somebody. Everybody's going to be worried about their internet connection, whether that's going to be stable or not. Their hardware there might be an issue. Maybe it doesn't process video quickly. There's concerns there. The actual presentation of yourself, what you look like online, that's a big deal. Is my hair right? Is my face right? All sorts of different, things you might worry about when you're on video. It can be stressful. It can be definitely stressful, especially if you're new to it. And you're processing 25 pictures of people at the same time. So you've got 25 different video faces and you're looking through them, and that takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy. And then also, who's watching you? Are other people, is my boss watching me? Are my friends watching me? Are they going to care what I look like? It really takes a lot of energy to process all of those things at the same time. And so that goes to your audience's comfort level. Adjusting those, some things you can't change, some things you can make some adjustments for. So the first piece, if you're hosting a meeting, is to plan it. Plan it and prepare what you're doing. Take the time to run through everything that you might be doing. And then test it. Test it and practice it. Get somebody else on with you. Turn your video on, turn your mute on, try your share screen, do whatever it is you're going to be actually using in the meeting to just get a little used to it. Get that muscle memory built up so that you know where the share screen button is, so that you know where the mute button is, and you're not hunting around for that in the middle of your meeting. That can make a really big difference, Next would be to update your software. Make sure your software is updated. That is a cause of, in my mind, almost a third of the perceived problems with Zoom. Is the fact that you've got differing versions of software. And then settings. Settings. There's so many settings, and that's one of those new facts of life. We didn't really have to think about, is my Zoom meeting settings correct? Are my computer meeting settings correct? There's lots of settings, so finding out where those are, which I'm going to show you later, and knowing which ones you're probably going to have to adjust. Some you're not going to worry about. Some are going to be a constant adjustment. Your mute button, reminding people where their mute button is, that definitely is a fact of life. That's something, it's a consistent, always. You'll be always saying to somebody somewhere, you're on mute, or somebody will be saying it to you. You know, it's one of those things, you can forget it. And that'll bring me to something else about the mute button in a second. But beyond checking your settings, sit up, turn the lights on, consider what the framing is. If your audience can't see you, then that starts to disengage with the audience. You know, do I look like I'm even interested if I'm sitting way back here with my head cocked? I'm just sort of sitting in my chair. You know, my audience is not going to think that I'm necessarily interacting with them or care about them. So sit up, turn the lights on, and start to think about where you're framed in your video. Are you centered? Are you off to one side? Are you too close? You know, it makes a difference. If you're up close, it's really like you're in somebody's face and you're really, really personal. Somewhere in the middle is kind of more natural. It's a more natural view of the person that you're speaking to. And consider what's behind you. That's important. Bookcases are a big popular thing, but if you have tons of stuff on there, it can be distracting. Your audience may be paying more attention to what's in your background, you know, versus what you're saying. I use a white background mainly because I use virtual backgrounds a lot, so it's easier for my video to process that way. But so is your background too busy? Is it a little messy? A couple of minutes, you know, a couple of minutes just thinking about it really does make a big difference, really makes a big difference. So we've got you've got your practice, you've got your planning, you're looking pretty good. Communicating to your audience prior is important. What's going to be happening? You know, does it even need to be a meeting? Does it even need to be a meeting at all? Is there something that you can communicate prior? Using email or any sort of asynchronous communication can really make a big difference, so that you're not dealing with all of those pieces in the middle of it. So having an agenda and letting your audience know ahead of time what interaction tools are going to be available to them. Are we going to be using the chat? Are we going to be using emojis? So communicating prior is really important as well. So once you get to the meeting, or getting set up for the meeting, another thing to keep in mind is that connection issues are a fact of life for everybody. They really are. There's thousands and thousands of things that go into place just to get 25 people on video in the same screen. But so there's all sorts of things that could go wrong in there along the way. Hang on just a second. Sorry about that. There's all sorts of connection issues that can come up. So be prepared for them. Expect them. And so if you're doing a meeting, you're doing a presentation, your time is best spent doing your troubleshooting on the hosts and the co-hosts and the speakers. Your audience, you want them to be there, but their connection is really sort of secondary to the actual presentation. So if you've got your main presenters taken care of, then your meeting, your presentation is going to happen. So get in there with them and set up early. Set things up, get in a half an hour early, set everything up, maybe practice your share screen, whatever you're going to be using, and check your settings. That's, again, right back to settings. That's always something. Check your settings. And then once you've got the meeting going, do a simple introduction, simple instructions. We're going to be using the chat. Like right now, I've got my chat up right there. I'm going to be using that for the first part of my presentation. So explaining verbally with audio what's going on. So we got your meeting up. We got all that other junk out of the way. And so you get here and, hi, my name's Mike. You know, my name's Michael Kyer, and I stream a lot. I've got a lot of experience with Zoom, and I'm out here 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. I'm out here on the West Coast, way up in the Pacific Northwest. So check in real quick. And limit check-ins. You can get your check-ins done either beforehand, or use breakout rooms so that you've got smaller groups who can check. Is much more efficient. Everybody doesn't have to check in with everybody, but it's nice to check in with folks. But limiting that, keeping that to a minimal amount of time is a really good idea. You can spend 20 minutes or more, and if you've got a meeting planned for an hour, that's going to take a big chunk of your time. So limiting your check-in time is a good idea. So let's see, what else we got here? Okay, so now we're getting to really some of the important pieces of this, and I'm going to try one more thing. And that is, the first part is that audio is primary. Even though this is video conferencing, audio is primary. And I've heard from a couple of people in different ways that audio without video is called radio, and video without audio is called technical difficulties. So audio, as long as you can hear what I'm doing, then you've still got that connection with your audience, or the chat. You've got the chat as well. So think in terms of audio being as the primary thing that you should be considering. And even though we're always reminding each other you're on mute, you're off mute, it's best practice to have your mute on, or be muted when you're not speaking. There's always something that can happen in the background. Dogs, sirens, somebody knocking on your door, whatever it is, and that will instantly take attention away from what the presentation is to whatever that sound is. So if you've ever been in a meeting where somebody's dog starts barking, then everybody's thinking about, what kind of dog do you have? So I implore everyone, please have your mute on unless you're speaking. And if you want to, this again, one of the things that we would, in pre-quarantine times, nobody in the room is going to be on mute, right? So a natural thought is to have everybody's mute off, right? Have everybody be able to speak at the same time. But it becomes indecipherable. If you've got more than one person talking at the same time, it just begins to be noise. It doesn't get you anywhere. So mute on unless you're speaking is crucial. If there's one thing out of this entire presentation, is that having the mute on when you're not speaking is important. Sound suppression. With your settings in your meeting, sound suppression is a functionality, but sometimes it can change what you're saying, or if you're using a musical instrument or something like that, that can make a difference. So knowing where the settings for your sound suppression or your original sound with no sound suppression, knowing where those settings are is another important consideration when we get to where the settings are. So now we've got audio figured out. We've got that main consideration. Being on video is really, really stressful. You're thinking about how you look, how other people look. So really be considerate of your audience's comfort. Having video off is okay. It's okay. You don't have to see who's there. Being at the meeting is being logged into the meeting. And so you can trust that person, if they've got their audio and their video icon up there and they can hear you, that they're at your meeting. And if you feel the need to require to have everybody's video on, then that's one of those questions where you can start to ask yourself, is there an actual need for this, or is it because of my own comfort? So that's, again, where you're starting to change that perspective of what does it mean to be in a meeting. So if you have a meeting and nobody wants to turn their video on, it's not anything to take personally. It really does deal with your audience's comfort. So again, audio's primary, video really can be off. It's an okay thing. It reduces that stress level on your audience. It's going to make it for a dramatically better meeting if that's something you're not requiring. And if you do feel the need to require it, tell them ahead of time. Tell people ahead of time that I want, your video on, and there's a reason behind it, hopefully. So, and then as we're going, we've got, audio, video figured out. Expect glitches. There's always going to be a glitch somewhere along the line. Somebody's video is going to go weird, or they're going to be on mute. We're going to have to remind you, you're mute. You're on mute. You're on mute. You can always signal, visually. You can, signal or knock on your headphones, or there's all sorts of ways to try and remind somebody that they're muted. So taking an extra second to when it's your turn or somebody else's turn, just take that extra second, which is, again, a different thing from the way things were before. We didn't need to build in that extra second, but again, it makes a difference. It really does. So take turns. Right back to the things you were supposed to be learning in kindergarten. Take turns. And if somebody else is speaking, just wait. Just wait a second. Just wait for them to finish, or a break in what they're saying, so that you're not trying to talk over each other. It just doesn't work well with online video, audio. It just doesn't work all that well. And so again, you get glitches. Communicate what's happening. If there's something that you didn't get set up right, or that went weird, or something along those lines, just tell your audience what's happening. Just a second, my stream just went all sideways, my mute button, whatever. Express that. Try your best to tell the audience what's happening. And just ask for their patience and understanding. Everybody will understand that, there's so many things that can go wrong. It's okay. It's okay if something kind of doesn't go quite perfectly every single time. So best practices for your actual meeting: use visuals. If you're not just using your video, but you're using a slide presentation or something like that, use your slide presentation best practices. Try not to have a slide presentation up and just read the text. That goes to the communication prior. If you can put the text out there, they can pull that up on a separate browser. You're not just sitting there reading or trying to follow along reading. You want to talk to your audience. Don't try and read everything on the screen. Talk to your audience. Interact with your audience. Use the chat. Post links in the chat. Links in the chat are amazing. You can post a link to a document or other supporting materials. Putting those links in there, they're highly efficient. Highly efficient. And I love using emojis. I love them. They're as small and as simple as it may seem. They can really express a lot of information very quickly. Just a little heart. You get that feeling that's wow, okay, they like that, or a thumbs down, or whatever it is. It really can make a big difference as far as the interaction with your audience. So I, again, encourage the use of emojis. They can be distracting depending on the nature of what you're doing. So go into the settings, determine whether you want to use them or not. make that adjustment. So a couple more things. The biggest one that I found is to limit the meeting time. If you've been in a 4-hour Zoom meeting, you can know how excruciatingly exhausting that can be. If you're a host, try and plan for a meeting that is 1 hour, no more. And Zoom, the basic accounts, they have a limit to begin with, a 40-minute meeting before you would have to restart another meeting. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. If you can't express what you want to express in 40 minutes, then consider cutting it up into different pieces so that you can take a break, relax a little bit, rejuvenate, and then come back at it so that you have that effective meeting. So limiting your meeting to an hour if possible. If at all possible, do it. It'll make your audience a lot more comfortable. It'll reduce the amount of stress and things that they have to process, and it'll make your meeting so much better. 4-hour meetings, even 2-hour meetings are just too long to be sitting, to be on video, to be considering everything. It's just too long. So if you have the possibility, and this is the last thing I'm going to go into before I switch over to the actual software itself, be stingy with your time. Limit the amount of meetings that you're in, that you're saying yes to, because really, more than 3 a day is just completely exhausting. If you have to go through 8 hours of Zoom meetings a day, you're going to be exhausted. And so be considerate. Don't schedule meetings over somebody's lunch hour. Try to really be thinking in those terms, and be stingy with your time. If you can avoid an extra long meeting, do so. That's something that I continually recommend. So that was a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to be posting that whole list of things in the future. But if you're watching on YouTube or something like that, you can always check out the transcripts. That list will be in there. But I'll put up a bulleted point list that's a little bit more truncated, so that you can have those reminders. But everything I just went through it'll give you a great meeting. And then you just have to go live and talk to people and interact with them and have fun. That's really key. Have fun with it. So I'm going to switch over and show some of the three separate pieces of this. I'm going to break it up into 3 parts real quick. It's not. This is for a basic Zoom account, and some of the important pieces to know about it as we go along. So let's see. All right, I am done with that. So now I'm going to switch over to my next scene. And let me just prep a thing real quick. I'm just pulling this up and reorienting my screen. Let's see. I'll take a little drink of water. Oh yeah, don't eat on screen. Whew. People get upset with that one. Eating on screen with your mute off is about the worst there is. So I would suggest not doing that like I just did. So, all right, let's switch over to... All right, there you go. I'm still at the bottom, so you can see me. I didn't go anywhere. I'm going to make sure that shows up on my other streams. Okay, good. There I am. All right, I'm going to turn that off so I'm not distracting. Okay, so Zoom. Zoom has 3 parts. When you first sign up for Zoom and then log in, the first part of Zoom is the web portal browser, the browser web portal. And this is where you have your global settings for Zoom. This is how your meeting is going to work, where you've got your recordings, and then your profile and all sorts of different settings and things in here. It's important to know that this is here because a lot of people will just only focus on the Zoom application, the desktop application, or the meeting window. And so knowing that this is here, knowing that this is one of the main parts of Zoom is important. So that's the first part. Second part is the Zoom app itself. A lot of us are familiar with this. And this is downloaded onto your computer as a separate piece of software when you first download Zoom, or when you first sign up and sign into Zoom. And this is got a lot of settings that are also in the Zoom web portal, but they are more active, the ones you're really going to interact more with as you're adjusting Zoom. And this is where you're going to check for your updates. You'll be looking for updates to your Zoom application. So I will go into that, but it's up here in this little icon up at the very top, your settings. So we'll open that in a second. But now, of course, we've got our Zoom meeting. Yay! This is the window that we're all mostly familiar with. If you've been in a Zoom meeting before, this is what it looks like. You'll see your dashboard at the bottom with all your buttons. And so you're going to see all of these. And those are the three main parts of Zoom. Really important to know that all three of those exist. They work together. There's settings. You've got global settings in your web portal. You've got your more active settings in your application, and then you've got your actual in-meeting settings that you're going to be changing or altering throughout the meeting. So I'm going to switch back to that real quick. Yep. So 3 parts to Zoom: the Zoom web portal, the Zoom desktop application, and then the meeting window itself. It's important to point those out. I've seen a lot of folks, they miss that there's a web portal, or they miss that there's an application. So it's important to point that out. So now we're going to go back to the Zoom settings. Settings. I'm going to move this out of the way. So in your web portal, we'll start there. A whole list of settings that are worth going through ahead of time. So you log in and you can look at your waiting room, your passcodes, everything you can think of. Scheduling a meeting, whether you want to have the video on when they log in, whether you want folks to be able to join before the host. All sorts of. Now, there really aren't tons, but they're worth going through and checking which ones you're going to want to set so that the meeting is behaving as you want it to. And this is a global setting. This is settings around all of your meetings. Boy, talking a lot this morning. So going through these, double checking these before you start your meeting, very important. Whether you want to allow co-hosts or not. Annotation, having a whiteboard. These are your emojis, whether you want to have certain emojis or no emojis. When you're in the meeting, you want to use breakout rooms, have closed captioning. This is an important one. I like to have this one set so the audience can use closed captionings. It's an accessibility concern, so this is one that I really like to point out on a regular basis. Go into your Zoom web portal and enable closed captionings. Highly recommended. Virtual backgrounds, whether you want to be able to use those or not. And you can see there's a whole list. Okay? Boy. So, web portal, settings, run down the list, check which ones you want before the meeting starts. Okay. The web app itself, or the desktop application itself. Settings in here are found in this little gear icon, and when you click on that, it brings up another window. Now, I don't know, I only said that there were three pieces of Zoom, but this is another important menu that is part of the Zoom app. And so, whole list of things that you can go through in here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but your video settings, your audio settings, your share screen, your chat, how your chat's going to behave, backgrounds and filters. This is where you're going to turn your background, virtual background on, and then keyboard shortcuts and some of your accessibility. This is where you can increase and decrease your chat sizes. So whether it's going to have your closed captions are going to be large or small, and whether the size of your chat, the way the chat looks in your meeting. This is not going to affect how your audience's captions look. This is for your accessibility. So the gear icon right at the top of the Zoom application, that's where you're going to be looking. And for the Zoom meeting itself, one of the things here is that underneath each of these, your mute and your video, you've got this little thing right here called a caret, and that's important. And that's going to bring up a list of settings. And so you can select which microphone you're looking for, which speaker you're using, and then at the bottom, it'll bring up your audio settings. Will take you right to that settings menu we just saw, but it'll take you directly to the audio tab. So we saw where that was in the Zoom application, or in the Zoom desktop application. Right here, that little gear. So that's what that little caret, audio settings. Same thing with the video settings right there. So you can see how these are redundant controls, same place to find different things. Okay. Those are all your settings. 3 different places to go. Web portal, Zoom application, and the meeting itself. Bunch of settings, but not terrible, right? So once you've set your Zoom meetings in your web portal before the meeting, you're most likely not going to need to adjust those, so you can just turn that off. You don't have to worry about it, but check it. Zoom application itself brings up your list again, and then the Zoom meeting underneath each one of your dashboard buttons. So the Zoom application, when you're in a meeting or before you start a meeting, you're able to schedule, and then you've got your chat feature here. You've got different, if you have friends connected to the Zoom app, you'll be able to see chat messages here with them. Right now I've only got my tech team on here. But this will also be a list of all the meetings that you have scheduled, a list of your contacts, and then other applications that you can integrate with the Zoom app itself. And that is a very, very it adds a lot of functionality depending on your use. So that's something to check out. But that's where all those are. I'm just going to lower that. Now, the Zoom meeting itself, basic meeting, your mute on and off, video on and off, your security settings. This is going to be how your meeting behaves, whether you want your participants to be able to chat, or rename themselves, these different pieces. So that's your security button. Your participants list, this brings up your list of who's here. So if your audience is connected, they're going to have these 2 little icons, one for your microphone, one for your camera. But now it shows that they're both off, but as long as that icon is there, it's connected. So if I disconnect from my computer audio, you're going to see that icon disappears and it gives you a different identification number there. So you want to join computer audio, and then your icon. These two are here, your audience is connected and they can hear you. So, and then the chat, that brings up this little button, this little piece here. This is where your chat messages are going to show up. Hi. That's where those are going to show up, and then you've also got settings, redundant settings in here on this little ellipsis, and redundant settings on this little ellipsis. So these are the same as your security buttons. So these different place to find what you're looking for. And one quick thing, these are fun. So you can pop out the chat. You don't have to have it attached to the meeting, so you can move that over. Same thing with your participants button. Pop that out. So you can separate this out. You can adjust this in a way that makes a little bit more sense for you. So that's something cool I like to point out. And then if you want to put it right back, you can just merge it to the meeting window. And same with this one. Merge it to the meeting window, and there you go. Original sound. This is where you're going to get into your the difference between your sound suppression and your the original sound, so you can make those adjustments with your original sound if that's enabled in your settings. So, and then of course our view button, gallery view, speaker view, immersive view. It gives you a background for all 25 people. That's a little bit more in-depth lesson. So I'm not going to go into that one, but stopping incoming video. This doesn't do anything to your audience's video other than turn it off, so that you don't. It'll help with reducing the amount of processing load on your computer. So if you've got an older or a slower computer, stopping all of that incoming video will make a big difference in how well your computer is working. So that's the three pieces of Zoom: your desktop application, your Zoom meeting, and your web portal, which I have now closed. Let's see if this comes back up again. Sorry about this. I closed something I didn't mean to close. So obviously where it comes into communicating with your audience. So 3 parts of Zoom: settings, all over the place. So very important to know that those are all there, that there's those 3 parts. Each ones have settings that they each interact with. Some are redundant. Your web portal has global settings. Your web app has the more active settings that you're going to use, and then the meeting settings is how your meeting behaves in real time. So there's one last piece I'm going to bring up, and that's updates themselves. So I don't need that anymore. I'm going to leave the meeting. I'm going to close that. The web or the desktop application, when you open this up, you want to check it for updates. Go to your gear icon, go to your profile icon, and it will bring up this little list and scroll right down to check updates. That's it. You click on that, and it'll tell you whether or not your application is up to date. So we're currently on version 5.9.1. I just downloaded that this morning on December 27th. So if you haven't updated, today is a day for that if you want. Very simple to find. Go to your desktop application, click on your icon, and then go down to check updates. Very important. I encourage it. Please do it. It will make your life easier and really reduce a lot of the issues with Zoom. The perceived issues with Zoom. So now I'm going to just switch back to me. So there you go. There you have it. That is a quick overview of Zoom to have a great Zoom meeting. And really, those basic best practices and knowing where your settings are, knowing where the buttons are, paying attention to whether you're on mute, but critical is taking into account your audience's comfort. That's the big switch, is take your audience's comfort into account. So hopefully you've learned something today. I hope that as we get into this new year and we have more meetings, this Omicron variant is looking pretty bad. So if you are eligible for vaccines, please go get them. It's good for you. It's good for your neighbors. It's good for everybody. Get your vaccines, and let's get ahead of this thing so that we can have more in-person meetings. We can have more meetings that are face-to-face. Zoom's going to be here it's going to be here. Video conferencing is here to stay. So I would encourage you to get out there and practice. Plan your meeting, prepare, check your settings, think about your audience, a whole list of things. I'll be putting out that list of everything in text form, so that you can have access to it. But that's it. I'm going to leave it there for the day. My name is Michael Kyer, and I'm out here streaming 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, trying to bring out some good information about all the different things that we use for streaming, some best practices along the way. Hopefully have a little bit of fun with it. So when you get out there, have fun, learn. That's important. So hope you're having a great holiday, and I will leave it at that. Talk to you later. Okay.